Kalen hooked his fingers under the loose corner of the metal plate and tore it free, revealing a mother's jade-green arms locked in a desperate, trembling shield around her child. The girl didn't scream. She only stared with eyes too wide for her face, reflecting the flickering emergency lights of the derelict ship. Kalen froze, the heavy scent of ozone and unwashed skin hitting him like a physical blow. Who else is hiding in the corners of the galaxy? And what would you do if you found them? Subscribe to join our journey through the stars as we uncover the secrets of the frontier. Now, let's look back at how a desk-bound analyst ended up with a ship full of ghosts. 3 hours earlier, the station clerk at Aurelian Terminus had spat a glob of stim paste into a brass bin and pushed a digital stylus across the scratched counter. Kalen's hands, softened by years of tapping data slates in a climate-controlled office, felt clumsy as he gripped the tool. He was buying a way out. Specifically, he was buying the Star Thistle, a decommissioned runner that looked like it had been chewed on by a gravity well and spat back out. The clerk's eyes were milky with cataracts. He didn't ask why a man in a crisp union suit wanted a hunk of scrap. He just grunted, mentioning that these old long-haulers often collect surprises in the dark between owners. Kalen hadn't listened. He was too busy smelling the recycled air of the station, a mix of grease and desperation he was finally leaving behind. Stepping into the ship felt like entering a tomb. The interior was a maze of exposed wiring and bulkheads stained with the phantom soot of 1,000 engine cycles. Kalen moved through the galley, his boots echoing too loudly on the deck plates. He noticed the scars on the walls, gouges from heavy cargo, or perhaps something more violent. He reached the midsection intended for fuel cell storage when he heard it. A rhythmic, muffled sound. It wasn't the hum of a cooling fan or the groan of settling metal. It was a sob. Kalen's heart hammered against his ribs. Protocol dictated he call station security immediately. An unregistered life form on a private vessel was a breach of a dozen interstellar codes. But as he looked at the grime beneath his fingernails, he realized he was done with protocols. He followed the sound to conduit hatch 09. The metal was cold. He found an oversized dark blue dock uniform shirt stuffed into a gap in the bulkhead nearby, likely used as a makeshift pillow or a rag to dampen sound. He pulled it out, the fabric smelling of ship grease and something sweet, like crushed blossoms. Then he braced his feet and pulled. The plate gave way with a screech of protesting alloy. Inside the cramped, dark space, the woman Lyris didn't plead. She looked at Kalen with a raw, feral intensity, her jade-green skin bruised and slick with sweat. She held the child so tightly it seemed they might fuse into a single being. Kalen didn't call the guards. Instead, he reached into his pack and pulled out a sleeve of Cinderglow rations and a pressurized water canister. The transition from being a discarded tool to choosing one's own path starts with a single, quiet choice. Do you think Kalen made the right one? Or is he just inviting disaster? He slid the rations toward them. Lyris didn't reach for them. She only watched his hands, waiting for the blow she clearly expected. Kalen stepped back, giving them space in the suffocating heat of the ship's gut. He knew he had to get them off the station before the heat scans began. Kalen didn't wait for an answer he knew she couldn't give. He climbed into the pilot's chair, his heart drumming a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The station's departure sequence was a cold, automated gauntlet. Outside the viewport, the Aurelian Terminus was a jagged crown of white light against the void, humming with the power of 1,000 scanners. The radio crackled. A board inspector's voice drifted through the cabin, asking for a final life sign sweep. Kalen's hand hovered over the console. He looked at the bulkhead where the mother and child were hidden, then at the sensor array. He toggled a manual override, dumping a burst of coolant into the external vents to mask the heat signatures in the midsection. "Clear," Kalen said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Just me and a lot of old dust." Then came the launch. The Star Thistle groaned as the docking clamps retracted. Without a full crew to manage the inertial dampeners, the acceleration was a brutal physical weight. Kalen felt the ship lurch, the G-force pinning him to the leather. Suddenly, the cockpit door hissed open. Lyris stumbled in, clutching Talus to her chest, unable to stay upright in the shaking belly of the ship. Kalen didn't think. He reached out, grabbing Lyris's arm and pulling her into the wide, reinforced pilot's seat beside him. For a breathless minute, they were a single mass of tangled limbs and gasping lungs, anchored together as the ship punched through the station's gravity well and into the silent black. The jade green of her skin pressed against his suit, warm and startlingly real. The violence of the ascent faded into the low, rhythmic thrum of the deep space engines. Kalen watched the diagnostic screen. The station was a receding spark. He reached for the ship's manifest, his fingers hovering over the digital ink. He could list them as cargo. He could list them as stowaways. Instead, he typed 2 words: family vessel. It was a legal binding, a shield that the Union couldn't easily pierce. He wasn't just an analyst anymore. He was a guardian. Months later, the Star Thistle drifted toward a remote trading hub. The ship was different now. The smell of ozone had been replaced by the scent of simmering broth and the sound of Talus laughing in the corridors. Lyris stood at the co-pilot station, her movements fluid and confident. She wasn't hiding in the shadows of the bulkheads. She was charting the course. Kalen watched her, noting the way she moved with a new kind of grace. She was wearing the oversized dark blue dock uniform shirt, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. It was no longer a rag used to muffle cries. It was a garment of comfort, soft from a dozen washings and smelling of home. As they prepared to dock, Lyris caught his gaze and smiled, a silent acknowledgement of the life they had built from scrap. They walked down the ramp together, stepping openly into the light of a new sun. Join us again tomorrow as we explore more stories from the edge of the galaxy. What would you sacrifice to give a stranger a home? We'll be here to tell the tale.